Welcome to my Week 8 final presentation, my persuasive speech. My topic today will be pro same-sex marriage. While I understand this has been something of a hot-button topic, and it has oftentimes been kind of beating a dead horse, as they say, this is still something that I am very passionate about, and there are still a great number of places and people and groups and organizations that are very much against same-sex marriage for one reason or another. Typically those reasons are rooted in religious preferences and religious beliefs. So my speech today will be very much for same-sex, while still being able to understand and empathize with those who are against it for their religious beliefs due to their upbringing or their background or however it may be. So I hope you enjoy. Same-sex marriage has been legalized since June 26th of 2015. On June 26th in 2015, the Supreme Court legalized same-sex marriage for all 50 states in the United States. This ruling came after a large movement in early 2014 to make same-sex marriage legalized in a state-by-state type situation. Each state was given the right to decide whether or not that it wanted to make same-sex legalized. Many states opted to go ahead and make same-sex marriages legalized due to the fact that it was simply an infringement on individuals' First Amendment rights. They had no freedom of speech. They didn't have the ability to make those decisions themselves. And simply put, to be married in a civil union in a courthouse or by a sheriff or a justice of the peace or any of those individuals in that capacity, marriage is a legally binding contract. It has nothing to do with religion, as many of the opponents of same-sex marriage argued, saying that it was a sin and it was against God and the churches didn't want it. The biggest argument against that was the definition of separation of church and state in the early 1800s by Thomas Jefferson. The idea of the separation of church and state was written in the First Amendment, and a small excerpt from that is, "Congress shall make no law representing an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof." Basically stating that Congress shall make no law that is respecting an establishment of religion, saying simply that we're banning same-sex marriage because the churches think it's a bad thing. They are not allowed to make laws based on religious context. They need to make the laws based simply on their own personal, not on their own personal religious beliefs, but from a viewpoint of the civil understandings and being able to allow freedom and the right to choose of each individual person, not because the Bible says it's a bad thing or the Quran says it's a bad thing or the Torah or any of those. Civil marriage is basically without religion context, and it can be done at any local government. I could go to the Justice of the Peace, or I could find a non-denominational officiant. I'm actually myself personally a registered officiant. I married my cousin and his husband several years ago in the state of Iowa. The ban on same-sex marriage was basically an infringement on those civil rights. It was basically saying that if you get married in a same-sex relationship, you don't have the same rights as me, who married my wife. You simply can only cohabitate. You cannot have rights to their insurance. You cannot have rights to death benefits, survivor's benefits, any of those things. It extended so far into the military, also saying, prior to Bill Clinton's administration, that if you were openly gay, you were not allowed in the military because it would corrode unit cohesion. After Clinton's administration, he did what was infamously known as the don't ask, don't tell policy. You could be gay, you could go into the military, you just simply were not allowed to discuss it. It was not something that you could talk about and be open with. It was just, you had to keep it private, you had to keep it separate from the military. During the Obama administration, he repealed even that, and you could be openly gay. You could, it didn't have to be a secret anymore. People could join the military and be openly gay about it. Fort Bragg actually had, in 2013, had their first gay marriage between two Army officers. And prior to that, that was unheard of, and it was just something that could not be done. Again, the argument that same-sex marriage should be illegal because the Bible says it's wrong and it goes against religion and things like that, it's an argument that has no solid ground to stand on. It's based strictly on a religious belief, and the country itself was actually founded on freedom of religion and freedom of oppression. You would not be oppressed for your beliefs. You would not have to worry about, what you can and cannot say based on what you do or do not believe. So, to oppress someone because they don't believe the same things as you, or they have a different viewpoint as you, is basically, for lack of a better word, it's spitting on what the Constitution was originally written for and what this country was originally founded on. It wasn't actually until the early 90s that they actually started banning same-sex marriage in the first place, stating that it went against certain beliefs. There was just no actual footing for this argument, as it literally and figuratively contradicted everything in the First Amendment. Based on that little argument alone there, the idea of same-sex being illegal is a baseless and pointless argument. It's one of those things that, while I understand certain religions are very adamant about same-sex marriage, saying that, it is a sin to lie down with your brother or your neighbor or whatever, at the same time, they have to stand there and to claim to be a good Christian. I feel like that's contradictory of itself, as well as I was raised in a Christian household, but I was also raised to be accepting and understanding of everyone, regardless of what they believed in, whether they believed the same things I did, or they had no religious beliefs, or just different religious beliefs than me. That's the idea of a good Christian. And if two people want to get married and they happen to be guys or girls, it should make no difference. I understand, from a religious standpoint, it's a sin and things like that, but you also have to understand that perhaps they don't believe the same thing as you or me or anyone else. And we need to, as a country and as a world, work to become more aware of these things, not so much that we can cater to a particular type of group, but just so that we can grow and enlarge ourselves as humans as a whole. So that was my Week 8 presentation, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.